Thank you, Mr Deputy President. Look, I rise to, of course, support the Motor Accident Injuries Amendment Bill 2017. I do so with a sense of great satisfaction and pride in the government's achievement that we will hopefully be adopting tonight in this chamber. The bill introduces a new compulsory third-party insurance scheme for people who are injured or lose their life tragically as a result of a motor vehicle accident on our roads in New South Wales. And I'm reminded that in the period of this debate there would no doubt be dozens of people in New South Wales who have been affected that would be making claims in this insurance scheme. It's affecting people's lives all the time. It represents a major reform by this government, another economic reform by this government that will provide meaningful and measurable benefits for injured people as well as millions of vehicle owners across New South Wales. The New South Wales CTP scheme provides a vital safety net to protect and support injured road users in this state. The scheme provides compensation to injured road users such as medical and treatment expenses, compensation for economic loss and payments for pain and suffering for those with permanent injuries. And now the cost of the scheme is met through the CTP green slip premiums, which we've heard the last speaker talk about the pain of paying, which are paid by all vehicle owners in this state. A CTP green slip covers the owners or the driver of a motor vehicle for the cost of the injury sustained by other road users. That was caused by the owner or driver's fault or negligence and is in some cases regardless of fault. It's compulsory for motorists in New South Wales to purchase a green slip before registering their vehicle. Now, since 1988, this New South Wales CTP scheme has been provided by private insurance companies which are licensed and overseen by the State Insurance Regulatory Authority, or SIRA. These welcome reforms that we're debating tonight to CTP follow recent reports into CTP by the Standing Committee on Law and Justice, which I did chair. And we heard from the Honourable Daniel Mookhey that he participated, and indeed the Honourable Mr David Shoebridge is a member, and yourself, Mr Deputy President, also a participant, and Mr David Clark and Honourable Linda Volz from memory. I'd like to think that this report assisted the government and the minister in arriving at their reforms, which largely follow the directives of our key recommendations. And when we tabled our report into the CTP, the first report, the government's response to recommendations was largely wait and see, we're reviewing it. And there was a bit of trust for us to see what was happening. We were aware during the inquiry that the government had put out a model, which basically is what we're looking at now, for consultation, but it missed the opportunity for us to have a look at that. And so, of course, in 18 months' time or thereabouts, when we do our inquiry into CTP, the Law and Justice Committee, we'll be able to have a look at the beginning, the first year at least, impacts of these reforms. I imagine it might be too soon to really get a trend, but we'll be able to review the report, and that's an important role this House plays. The Minister in the other place said that the reforms had many mothers and fathers. He didn't mention our inquiry. Perhaps we're the great uncles and great aunties in the upper house, but we certainly had a role in over the years, and certainly recently in this consultation process. Now, as members would be aware, the current CTP Green Slip Insurance Scheme is no longer serving the best interests of people injured in motor vehicle accidents or vehicle owners in our state. I think that's universally agreed. The consultation process undertaken by our inquiry and by the government, universally, all the stakeholders said it's broken, it's unsustainable, it needs to be reformed. In fact, we heard that insurance schemes of this nature around the world largely need to be reviewed and reformed roughly every decade.
Hopefully treated more nimbly.
Yes, indeed, identifying trends, but roughly every decade, because, think of the right word, but certain organisations and individuals find gaps and holes, loopholes, and start to exploit the scheme. And roughly every decade, you need to come back and look at it. And of course, it's been 15 years, I think it is, since this was looked at. And encourage the government to, as Mr Shoebridge just suggested, to maintain a close watching brief on the performance of this scheme, which I know our committee will do. Our committee heard evidence from a range of organisations who are coincidentally the same organisations that have now endorsed this reform: New South Wales Bar Association, the Australian Lawyers Alliance, the Law Society of New South Wales, the Insurance Council of Australia, and the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons. Now, what was apparent from the inquiry's evidence was the strongly emerging trend of fraud, exaggeration and claims harvesting that was impacting dramatically upon CTP performance, which had resulted in significant increases in minor severity claims with legal representation. That had a flow-on increase to the cost of green slips of approximately $200 per premium per year, and that was only projected to increase exponentially if nothing was done. We heard in evidence from CIRA that fraud and claims harvesting were estimated to cost the scheme $400 million per year. All the evidence suggested that this is unsustainable, and clearly it was inequitable in our community, and the government has responded tonight. Nearly all witnesses, whether they were lawyers, barristers or from the insurance industry, agreed this could not continue, and we recognised at the time that the government was well advanced on a reform process, including, as we see before us, the hybrid fixed benefits model, which we felt at the time would help address some of the issue, and so here we are today. I congratulate Minister Victor Dominello, as many of the speakers have done tonight, for the work and consultation he's undertaken regarding the CTP reforms. The committee expressed concerns at the time about the urgency of the situation, and one of our recommendations was led to this response that the government reform the cost regulations around the legal costs of CTP, and that's in the new Act, the structure of fees. The objective of this type of scheme, Mr Deputy President, should be to ensure that someone who is injured, we mustn't lose track of the objective here, someone who is injured in a car accident receives proper treatment as quickly as possible and is able to return to life and to work as quickly as possible. Instead, we currently have a scheme which a large proportion of people are caught up in legal arrangements whereby their claim is delayed, they're forced to undergo multiple medical tests, and sometimes they might wait months or even years for claims to be resolved. I note, as others have noted in this debate, that today we seem to be in a much more mature level of debate about the third-party compulsory insurance scheme. And, you know, I didn't envy Minister Dominello when he acquired the CTP reform process, because we can see from our inquiry, we can see from the previous models put forward, including one earlier model that this minister did propose, that it's, for want of a better term, a minefield or quicksand of vested interests who have a lot of voice in the community, and it was a difficult reform process to go through. So I congratulate the stakeholders, but also congratulate our colleagues in this House for the maturity of the debate on these reforms in a very difficult area. A compulsory third-party insurance scheme, excuse me.
Take your time.
Just drying out there. I'm going to add to my speech now. Sorry about that. A compulsory third-party insurance scheme is an area in which a great deal of work is dedicated to car and traffic safety, but there will always be car accidents, unfortunately. We want a compulsory third-party insurance scheme that will get people through a difficult period in their life following a car accident, ensure they will receive appropriate treatment and get them back to their life, back to their family and back to work as quickly as possible. We heard that reform of these schemes, as I said, is a housekeeping project that needs to be undertaken approximately every 10 years. And as I said, I urge the government to monitor the performance of this scheme nimbly, as suggested, ongoing, to detect the emergence of any trends of fraud and close loopholes expeditiously so that the scheme maintains its viability and fairness. Now, this bill follows a comprehensive review of the scheme, as I said, undertaken in 2016, involving extensive community and stakeholder consultation. Now, the scheme affects all of us, as I say, as vehicle owners and as members of Parliament as well. Without reform, green slip prices were going to continue to increase dramatically. As I said, State Insurance Regulatory Authority, CIRA, estimated that the additional cost to New South Wales motorists of fraudulent and exaggerated claims was as much as $400 million a year. Fraud, as we discussed in the report, currently adds about $75 to the cost of each green slip. The scheme actuaries reported that if the rising trend in claim costs went unchecked, there would be a significant impact to scheme affordability, with predicted price increases of 10 to 20% per year over the next 18 months going forward into the future. This would equate to an average increase for passenger vehicles in Sydney of between $65 and $130 over the next 2 years. This bill represents the views emerging from those consultations and the feedback the government has received. The overwhelming consensus emerged from the consultations was clear that CTP scheme is broken and is not serving injured road users as well as it could and as well as it should, and it has to be reformed. Now, we heard the figure that in the current CTP scheme, only 45 cents in every green slip dollar ends up in the hands of injured road users. And I myself just did my CTP slip and also thought about the fact that the $640 odd of which I paid, only half of that would be going, less than half of that would be going to injured road users. The rest is eaten away by scheme costs and provider fees and, as we heard, profits. This includes insurer expenses, insurer profits, legal and investigative expenses and other expenses involved in administering the scheme. And I want to just turn to insurer profits for a moment. The green slip prices in New South Wales have also been particularly volatile over the past few years as a result of external market components such as the reduction in investment income for CTP insurers from premiums. They invest their premiums for future costs, government bonds and inflation. Commercial decision by CTP users to change their pricing mechanism and the lack of certainty in the scheme. These are the reasons we're given for the volatility of the profit. They claim that this uncertainty is built into the premiums by the conservative pricing of the insurers, which has historically led to insurers obtaining larger than expected profit margins year after year. An independent review of the insurer profit and competition in the New South Wales CTP scheme was undertaken in 2015. The review found that over the life of the scheme, there's been a consistent pattern of discrepancy between filed and realised profits of the CTP insurers. The long-term average of realised profits is around 19%. Not a bad return for any business, let alone insurance, which is more than double what insurers filed when they were setting their prices. And the Law and Justice inquiry into CTP expressed serious misgivings around the excessive insurance profits. This bill will deliver a substantial reduction on the average price of green slips and ensure that the scheme is sustainable into the future. It will also reduce insurer profit by bringing greater certainty and benefits and timeframes. The bill will introduce defined benefits and no-fault benefits for people injured in motor vehicle accidents in New South Wales. And this will allow insurers to price risk more accurately, ensuring more funds flow to injured people when they need it, particularly the more seriously injured. Importantly, eliminating these so-called insurer super profits will help reduce green slip premiums. And I put, no doubt with my colleagues in the committee, the insurers on notice that we'll certainly be watching the performance in this area. Maybe the next inquiry might not be enough time to see a trend, but we'll be certainly keen to see how these insurance profits perform under the reforms. Now, as a further safeguard, the bill will boost CIRA's powers to regulate premiums, including the ability to reject premiums if it is deemed excessive or does not comply with the premium determination guidelines. So CIRA has a beefed-up role, which we will also monitor closely in our inquiry in regards to the performance of the insurance profits. At present, there are 6 licensed CTP insurers in New South Wales. Green slip prices are set independently by those insurers, having regard to the likely cost of claims and associated costs of delivery. In recent years, as we know, they've increased dramatically. Currently, New South Wales has, and it's not something we really want to boast about, currently New South Wales has the highest CT premiums in Australia, with the average vehicles paying over $650 for their green slips. This bill will provide significant better outcomes for people injured on roads and more affordable CT premiums. For the first time, defined benefits for loss of earnings and treatment and care will provide for all people injured in a motor vehicle accident, regardless of fault. And that's a big reform for up to 6 months post-accident. Injured people with moderate to serious injuries who meet certain criteria will be entitled to up to 2 to 5 years of benefits. Will also be able to claim for damages under common law. The focus of the reforms will very much on ensuring that injured people receive the support they need, see what my mind's been, when they need it, so that they can get back on their feet as soon as possible by providing defined benefits for soft tissue and minor psychological injuries for up to 6 months and removing access to the common law system in those cases. We realise the government, as I said, released an option paper for reform on CTP scheme calling for submissions and feedback from stakeholders, and more than 50 submissions were received from a range of individuals, organisations, industry and stakeholder associations. And I think we only received 8 or 9 submissions at the CTP inquiry, so that's a lot of stakeholders engaged with the government's process. Roundtable forums are held with major stakeholder groups, including legal professionals, insurers, road user groups, transport bodies and medical and allied health associations. The consultation process was supported by an independent consumer research project covering vehicle owners, road users and injured people who have made a CTP claim. The research incorporated focus groups, qualitative research and an online discussion forum. This is the way legislation should be done, this level of consultation. This bill represents the views emerging from those consultations and the feedback the government received, and as I said, the Upper House inquiry I would like to think helped too. The government has listened to all the stakeholders and has their support to deliver long overdue reforms for people injured in our roads and for vehicle owners in New South Wales who for too long have paid increasingly high green slip premiums. It's now our turn in this parliament to heed the call of the people and deliver long overdue green slip reform for our state, and it's well overdue. Once more I congratulate Minister Victor Dominello for his reformist zeal in this area and others, and his courage, and he continues to demonstrate and his ability to build coalitions of support on sensible reforms that ultimately benefit both those in need of insurance through injury and those who pay for it. I commend this bill to the House.
Deputy President.
The Honourable Paul Green.